Yo, what's good, YouTube, man? It's Gary with another Fan TV back at another video. Like the content of this video, go smash that like button, like the content of this channel. Go and subscribe, man. Look, so the Ravens, didn't only make one move. The trade deadline has come and gone. So we'll talk about that one move. We're gonna talk about my feelings about them not doing anything else at the trade deadline. A lot of Ravens fans are upset, disappointed. So we're gonna talk through it, right? So, all right. I'm going to talk about Draymond Jones first, just because the Ravens did make that move. So give him the respect, talk about him, what he brings to the team, things like that. The news broke yesterday that this trade was official, was going to happen. I didn't want to do a video until the full trade deadline was passed, and we could see if the Ravens did anything else. They did not, unfortunately. But this is what we'll say about Draymond Jones, right? I did a video talking about trade candidates from the Titans, multiple people from the Titans, Arden Key, Jeffrey Simmons, Kevin Zeitler. He wasn't one of the guys that I mentioned, but it was very obvious that Tennessee was going to be a team that was going to be willing to give up some players, right? So the Ravens reach out and they get Draymond Jones in here. So now Draymond Jones, 28 years old, 6'3", 280. I really first became aware of him a couple years ago when he was leaving. When he was leaving Denver to go to Seattle on free agency, he got a pretty nice payday. But he's always been a guy inside, outside versatility, can generate some pressure, is versatile across the front line. He brings something different to the Ravens, right? Now, listen, I'm not hyping him up as the solve for the pass rush. Don't get that from me. But he is a guy that the Ravens do need. They needed some more edge rush, some more edge support, and he provides that absolutely. Okay, he has 4.5 sacks this year. Which would be the number one lead on the Ravens right now. All 4.5 of those sacks came in his last 4 games, so he's heating up at the right time. So the Ravens get a player that's ascending right now in terms of his play. He's playing well, he's moving well, he's getting pressure. It's a good move from that aspect. Is it enough to say like, oh yeah, I'm satisfied with the trade deadline? Absolutely not. Come on now, we know that, right? So I'm not going to completely rain down on Draymond Jones when he is a good player, right? The expectations was just a little bit higher on what the Ravens could do in terms of getting somebody else on this roster, right? So that's not Draymond Jones' fault, right? I think he'll be a fine addition to this team. I think he'll help, right? I think he'll make some splash page. I think he'll pop something too. So I'm happy about that addition, but obviously we wanted more. All right, now also the Ravens they decided to release Sanusi Kane. It's not a trade thing, but it's something that did happen around this trade deadline. Decided to release Sanusi Kane. Keandre Jackson kind of taking his spot on the special teams. He's down there first, like every time. They love him. Harbaugh loves special teams guys. So somebody's picking an impact like that, it's going to get a roster spot, right? So they decided to release Sanusi Kane. Now, let's talk about the main thing from today, right? There were some blockbuster trades, particularly involving the New York Jets, right? And the Ravens did not get in on any of them. Now, Sauce Gardner, I don't care about. I didn't want the Ravens trading 2 firsts for Sauce Gardner, but Quentin Williams, right? Quentin Williams was most Ravens fans' number one target. Say, hey, look, if we can get this guy, then we're set up to do something this season, potentially, right? And the Cowboys do it. The Cowboys get Quentin Williams, right? So the Cowboys trade their second-round pick this year and their first-round pick next year to bring Quentin Williams into Dallas, right? Now, I'm reading a lot of reports, not even reports, I'm reading a lot of fans' feelings online, and, Eric DeCosta's upset a lot of people. In this situation, I'm okay with it. I'm not gonna lie to you, right? It's unpopular opinion. You might cut it off right here. I just think a second-round pick and your first-round pick is too much for Quentin Williams. If it was a second-round pick and a third, a second round and a fourth, which is some people, these inside sources with the Ravens that are on Twitter who I don't believe. They said the Ravens offered a second and a fourth, right? That's the unsubstantiated report. That's a trade I'm willing to do 10 times out of 10, right? I just don't think that the value was there for a second and a first. That's just my opinion on it, right? Now, for Quentin Williams, he's 27 years old, so he's a year younger than Draymond Jones is, and he's one of the best players at his position, right? So it's not really about him. I just don't think the value is completely there to do that kind of move, right? If I'm being completely 100% honest, I just don't think that, right? And then on top of that, the Jets are making a bet that the Cowboys might not be good at all next year. So that first round pick is probably going to be higher than what they would have got from the Ravens this year, regardless, right? So the Jets do what was smarter for them. They make that move, right? Now, in terms of the Ravens not doing anything else, Ravens have a complete right to be upset about that, right? because the Ravens still hold on to pretty much all 10 fifth round picks that they have, right? Because the Draymond Jones trade is a fifth round conditional that's probably going to turn to a fourth round pick, right? I think it's conditional if he has 2 sacks and if the Ravens make the playoffs, right? One of those things happen, it becomes a fourth round pick, right? So the Ravens had multiple fifths, they got third round picks, they got second round picks for impact players, right? There was still multiple moves out there that the Ravens could have made, right? That to me, even just past Quentin Williams, you had to do something else to bring people into this roster, right? You cannot tell me that the only thing you could have did was bring in Draymond Jones. There was more guys out there, more veteran impact presence out there that you could have brought to this team, because you currently really have still no edge depth, right? Draymond Jones can play a little bit inside, can play a little bit outside. He's still only one person, right? So now your edge room still has to involve David Ojabo playing. David Ojabo, I believe, put up a 0% pass rush success rate versus the Dolphins. The Dolphins is not known to be a good offensive line. All right. So you still need help on the edge, right? Don't get me started on the outside of the ball on the offensive line. You needed guard play, right? The Titans are willing to make moves. That one of those fifth round picks, I guarantee they could have took it for Kevin Zeitler. You probably could have gave them a sixth round pick for Kevin Zeitler. He's an aging player who probably doesn't want to be there, and the Titans want to get anything in return for him. You could have did that, right? So there are moves out there to be made, and the Ravens did not make them. And then on top of that, not even on top of that, but this continuation of the offensive line point is that Lamar Jackson is coming back from a hamstring injury, his first ever hamstring injury, right? It took him first half of the Miami Dolphins game. Second half, he really, he felt a little bit more like himself, and he had that one scramble, right? I don't want to put Lamar Jackson in a situation where he has to fight for his life. And that's exactly what the Ravens are doing, right? This pass protection unit is still not good, particularly down the middle. So the Ravens probably were never going to, make moves to get off of Falele, make moves to get off of Voorhees, right? In terms of, bring somebody in that could potentially put those guys on the bench. But it's still disappointing, right? Because you see this team, you see what's happening. If I got access to all 22 films, obviously the Ravens have way better access than I do, and I can see these guys struggling week in, week out, right? There's content creators that make great content on YouTube that talk about it, that these guys are struggling week in, week out. The team sees the same thing that the fans see, right? They can't just say, well, we have a different perspective. Well, explain that perspective, right? So for me, if there's anything to be critical about that, there were more moves to be made. There was more depth pieces to be added. If you couldn't get that big star player, like how you traded for Roquan Smith, if you couldn't do that, there were more moves to be made, right? Just because you couldn't get Quentin Williams doesn't mean we're done. There was more moves to be made. Okay, you don't get Quentin Williams, get somebody else, right? Listen, we want the big star acquisition player, right? I wanted Quentin Williams here, right? If that's, like I said, that second round and that fourth round pick, if the Jets would accept that, I'm doing that trade 10 times out of 10. No questions asked, right? I want EDC to get off some of these picks. Stop pick hoarding so much. You don't need all these daggone draft picks, right? The Ravens are supposed to be a contending championship level team. Why are we drafting 11 players in a single draft? Half of these guys aren't going to make an impact until maybe year 3, if at all. So why are we drafting 11 guys? So I'm not defending hoarding draft picks, right? I want some of these draft picks gone. But you don't land Quentin Williams, you don't land the big fish. That doesn't mean we don't get anybody else. Because like I said, I like Draymond Jones. I think he's going to be a good player for the Ravens. I think he's going to help. But if you're telling me that we're going to go into this run, this end of the season, where the additions to the edge room have been just Draymond Jones and Carl Lawson, who hasn't played, who was on the couch a couple weeks ago, that's it for the Ravens edge room, I am not optimistic at all, right? So that's a swing and a miss by Eric DeCosta, right? This offensive line is a swing and a miss by Eric DeCosta and John Harbaugh, right? This goes back to the offseason. Their insistence on that there was no need for a competition for Daniel Falele honestly probably hurt Falele's growth, and it hurt this team as well. The Ravens a lot of times, their arrogance gets in the way. Oh yeah, we know what's best. This offensive line is going to work out. And they were wrong, right? So there were very, very obvious and clear needs that this team had, and they just did not address it, right? Now listen, you can say, people are going to say, well, they probably tried and it failed. I mean, that's great, right? You know, the list of almost Ravens is so long by now, right? Maybe you could throw Quinn Williams on that list, right? If that report is, you know, if that fan is right about, you know, they offered the second and the fourth, right? Maybe you could throw Quinn Williams on that list of almost Ravens, right? But point being, there was more to be done. And they just did not do it, right? So now you got to lower your expectation, right? This team is 3-5. Now, I still, with Lamar Jackson back, with the defense playing better than they were previously, I still think this team is going to make the playoffs. Hell, they might even win this daggone division, right? You know, I was hoping the Colts would beat the Steelers, but you know, it is what it is. They still might win this division, right? Still got 2 games versus Steelers left. They're going to have a softer back half of the schedule. The Ravens can still win 10, 11 games this year, potentially win the division. But in terms of getting past that, I don't have any expectation for it, right? You know, this team is not really built to go deep inside the playoff run, right? If Lamar Jackson is not perfect, they're not going to win. And that's an unfortunate place to be, because when you look at these other teams in this other landscape around the NFL, they don't force their quarterback to be perfect for the team to have to win, right? Unfortunately, that's the pressure the Ravens have put on Lamar Jackson by not doing enough to surround this team with more talent at premium positions. We're talking about edge. We're talking about, you know, when you have a superstar quarterback, having a good offensive lineman is now a premium position, right? But mainly, you know, that edge rush spot, right? They haven't got that right. They haven't been able to create pressure with force, something that I say repeatedly. And you know, the sole additions of Draymond Jones and Carl Lawson, you know, no offense to those guys, it's just not going to be enough to say, okay, now the Ravens have a true pass rush. And I hope I'm wrong, right? But I really don't believe that I am. So I get the, you know, fan disappointment and you know, the fan backlash that Eric Costa is going to get. I 100% get it. You know, I think it's very disappointing. I don't think he's wrong for not trading the first and the second round pick for Quinn Williams. That's my opinion. You guys can disagree on that, but I do think he's wrong for once it was clear the Jets were not going to move off of your package, right, for Quinn Williams, right? It was clear that you need to do something else. Not doing anything else or not having anything else finalized, that's a big miss. It just is, right? It's a huge miss. There are clear and glaring obvious holes on this team now that you really cannot correct now into the offseason. So now this season that has such high hopes is another one that's potentially wasted. Okay. And you have a quarterback in his prime playing like the best in the league. And it's just not enough at key spots to help this team get over the top. Right. So I don't want to boil this whole trade deadline down to getting Quinn Williams versus not getting them, right? It's deeper than that, honestly, right? It's not doing enough in general that led you to this point. And that's the true frustration that I have with the team, right? So, like I said, man, the Ravens will be good for the rest of this year in terms of winning games in the regular season. You know, they'll get into the play. I still believe they'll get into the playoffs, right? Like I said, they may win a division. But past the divisional round, I don't see much hope. You know, I want to be wrong. I really do want to be wrong about this team, but it's hard to see that when you just don't have the impact players that's going to affect the opposing quarterback, right? You just don't have those guys, right? You know what I mean? And then on top of that, your offensive line is gettable, right? Because these other people have quality edge rushers, right? You know, the Bills have Joey Bosa if he stays healthy, right? They have that guy, you know, if he stays healthy, right? You know, they also have some other pass rushers that do well for them, right? You know, the Chiefs still have Chris Jones who could tap into it, right? They have Steve Spagnuolo who could actually cook up effective blitz plans in the playoffs, right? So when you look at some of these other top teams, these teams that you're going to have to go through, where do you stack up? And to me, the Ravens fall short of that, right? So that's just my opinion on it. You know, I think the trade deadline was a little disappointing. I'm glad that they made a move, but they need to make several moves, and that's the issue, right? To be a team that is supposed to have as much talent, that was supposed to be as good as the Ravens are supposed to be, to come to the trade deadline, need to make several moves. It's a bad spot to be in, right? But that's where they are, and they didn't do enough. That's my opinion on it. All right. But you know, give me guys thoughts in the comments. It's Gabriel, 2 on Fan TV. I'm out.